Hey everybody, Comic Crack, back with the third part of a video. I recently had talked about all this footage that I had that I didn't want to edit together and blah blah blah. The third part of the video was the Criterion movie talk, and I've since lost that footage. It's been gone and disappeared, and I don't know what the hell happened. I'm sure some error due to my equipment, says the skilled technician. So this third part was going to be talking about the Criterion stuff that I got for my birthday, and just kind of talking about the movies in general, briefly. So let's just jump right into it. We'll start with the one that I don't know much about. I'd read a bunch of positive reviews and heard some really positive things about it. It's a science fiction, what was a two-part, I believe, 3.5 hour movie made for television. I think it was broken up into two parts. It was 1973, German, and it's Fassbinder's World on a Wire. The Blu-ray, this is the Blu-ray edition. Hopefully that glare is okay there. 212 minutes total, and it's a sci-fi epic. That again, I don't know much about it. I'm not a big Fassbinder guy myself, so I don't know very much about him. I may have seen one or two of his movies way back when I lived in Ontario. But I don't know much about this, so there's not really much to tell you other than I'd read a lot of good things about it and heard some really positive views on it. And it just came highly recommended from a number of sources, so it was on my wish list. So it was a nice surprise to get this. I watched the trailer. There's, as usual with Criterion stuff, there's a lot of good features. Maybe I should back up a minute and just kind of, I know I've said it many times before, but just kind of reiterate the point that if you sign up at Criterion.com for their kind of emailed newsletter, that's when you'll find out about the sales, usually a couple of times a year. They have a 50% off sale that lasts for 24 hours, and it's off of everything that they have on their online store. So everything they have in stock for 24 hours goes on sale. When you're subscribed to their newsletter, that's when you get notified. You also get kind of notifications, I believe, once a month with, hey, here's some stuff we have coming out, here's new releases, here's some links to some videos with directors talking about stuff, that sort of thing, which is usually fairly interesting as well too, just to kind of keep up to date with what they have going on. But the sales are when they really shine. So for a long time I've had like a wish list going. When you create an account, there's a section of the website where you can create a wish list, where you can go and say, oh, I'd love to have that in the future. So you can keep track of movies, adding and deleting them as necessary. So that came in really handy. My wife was able to access my account and see that, and then order stuff through my account. Now the other bonus, which I didn't know about until just this last time, is when you do have an account with them and when you do purchase things, that dollar value of what you spend gets cataloged once you spend $500 through Criterion, and that's, I've been ordering from them for years, kind of through the site. So I've amassed, I think, close to $400 worth of purchases over those years. When you get to $500, you get a $50 gift certificate, basically. It's an extra $50 to spend at the store, which I didn't know about until just this last time. So yet another reason to kind of attach yourself to the Criterion site and subscribe for their newsletter and stuff. So that's how a lot of this came about. Again, it makes it easier as far as like birthdays and Christmas. Hey, you want to get me some movies? Here's the link to my account. Here's the access information. Check out my wish list. You can order it straight from there, especially that this sale timed out right in the time period of birthdays and things. So that's how a lot of this happened. So World on a Wire. I'll let you know when I do watch it, which will be sooner than later, I think. But after this stack, you'll see how much I have to go through. Let's save that one. So we'll get into some of the box sets. One that I've kind of had my eye on for a long time. This came out I think it says 2009. Yeah, first printing 2009. So it's been out for a number of years, 6 years or so. And I've seen 1 or 2 movies from it. They have a series called the Eclipse series. I've got one other box set from the Eclipse series. This is Nikatsu Noir. So it's Japanese noir gangster type movies. From the earliest one is 1957, and then all the way to 1967. So 57, 58, 60, 64, and then 67. And they're all around the 90-minute mark. So Nikatsu was one of the production houses that made a lot of these movies. And they had some people... things were a little bit different then, as far as you were the in-house director, you were the in-house actors, so you were signed under contract with the company, and you had a certain amount of movies you had to make or whatever, or it was kind of, with some of the directors, I think it was years of contract, and or I don't know if it came to the amount of years that you worked for them or the amount of movies, but I think Nikatsu was the one that had a lot of just really interesting things going on. You know, Toho had a lot of like the monster movies and things. Nikatsu covered a lot of area as far as that was concerned. So this one has, one of the main reasons this was on my list is for this one here, Take Aim at the Police Van. It's directed by my favorite director of this era, Seijun Suzuki. And then this one was Cruel Gun Story, which I watched already, and it has a kind of Seijun Suzuki regular, or just a regular in these movies of this time period. Joe Shishido is in this one, and it looks like, is he also in A Colt Is My Passport? Yeah, Joe Shishido's in that one as well too. So yeah, he's one of those guys I love as an actor. He's infamous for having surgery on his cheeks to accentuate his cheeks, and it actually makes him look a little funny, like a chipmunk, and notoriously it was a really botched job, and later in his life he had it taken out, and now he's got these huge scars on his face because they just were shoddy to begin with. It was shoddy surgery to begin with. He did it to kind of so he could stand out a little bit. So the thing I love about some of this Japanese cinema, especially these kind of B movies that were directed at the youth culture and things like that, they're kind of off the hook as far as just filmmaking, period. You know, there's things like the French New Wave and things that get a lot of exposure for doing unique things in film. It's one of the areas of film where I think a lot of that is looked over, or overlooked rather, because some of the directors were doing some pretty avant-garde stuff. And again, I hate to kind of beat a dead horse, but a guy like Seijun Suzuki was doing some really crazy shit at the time. Notoriously, he got fired eventually when he released a movie called Branded to Kill. I think it was like his 44th movie that he had done or something. It was claimed to be so incomprehensible, and that people going to see movies weren't going to know what the hell was going on, and they were just sick of it because he had done this so many times. They'd finally had enough and said, you know what, that's it, you're done here. He got fired, he got let go. After that, he did some commercials, he did some more films eventually too, and then of course all this time passes, and he's kind of rediscovered by Criterion, and then rediscovered by a whole generation of film buffs that look at his movie now and go, holy Christ, the guy was doing some exceptional work as far as how he would break down a script, how he would film a script, what shots he would use, how he would edit it, and that sort of thing. And of course, it's the director that always gets the praise or the accolades or the criticism, but there was a whole group of people at the time. Even in the movie that I watched this Cruel Gun Story, sorry, is the one that I watched. And even in that one, there was a couple of sets that I had seen before in some other movies. So it's one of those things where it was a group of people working within this same industry in the same time period, and they were reusing a lot of sets and just giving it their own feel depending on the movie. But some of the work is out of control. This Cruel Gun Story wasn't the best. It was just okay. It was nice to see Joe Shishido, but it didn't blow me away. I have we'll see what the rest of this holds. I'm sure there's going to be some good stuff in here. I'm really excited. The next one I'll watch is the Suzuki one, this Take Aim at the Police Van. But yeah, so that I'm pretty excited about, just because I really like that whole era. I'll probably have more to say about this one. Okay, I'll go right to this one. This Custom Bromstar will know about, and if you search in his back catalog of movies, you'll see him talk in a great detail about this. So I won't say too much about it, other than, boom, I got it. This is Zatoichi, the Blind Swordsman, the impressively enormous and beautifully put together box set of, 25 movies, I believe? Let's have a look here. Yes, 25 movies. So the last movie, Zatoichi's Conspiracy, came out in 1973. And the first one, called The Tale of Zatoichi, came out in 1962. So over 11 years they did 25 movies, which again is kind of a product of the time, especially for things like this, which by no stretch would have been considered epic movies. They definitely would have been considered the B feature. The first one was so popular that it just sparked this, well, let's keep making more, and then they just didn't stop and become in being popular. So the series just kind of went off there. The only thing that I'll add to this is I love what they've done with the book, and there's a couple of surprises as far as names. So they have a little write-up on each of the movies, and then an illustration. This one by Benjamin Mara, who I recently talked about in my, I think it was the Traditional Comics haul that I got. So he's a guy that I follow now. Here's another name, Victor Kirlo, who I recognize as well. I can't tell you off the top of my head what work he's done, but I know it's a name that I've come across. Those were the two names that jumped out at me. Just having a quick look through to see if there's anything else. Oh yeah, there you go, Matt Kint doing an illustration for the 12th movie, Zatoichi and the Chess Expert from 1965. Eric Carter and Bryce. Yeah, no other name that jumps out at me. Oh, hey, look at that. I lied. Paul Pope. There you go, a Paul Pope illustration. Hopefully that's showing up. So just a beautifully done box set, and I'll just kind of show you the insides. Again, if you want to see a really in-depth, I'd suggest going to Custom Bromstar. So for each of the movies, there's, or each of the discs, there's one Blu-ray and 2 DVDs. So the first one has these first 3 movies, and that's how it's laid out for each kind of chapter. We'll just kind of go a little further on. So here's movie 13, 14, and 15, and same thing, 1 Blu-ray, 2 DVDs. Just beautifully done, a really nice book. And then all kind of hangs out in this amazing looking box. It's one that, as Scott's well aware, has been on my list for a long time, and I was very envious when he got his hands on it, used no less, for an unbelievable price, I think, from what I remember. So it was great to get this at the 50% off sale, which is why it made it onto my list and hung out there for so long. It was just waiting for this exact moment to hit a sale, and as a special sexy lady friend will tell you, I've been talking about that thing for years, so she was kind enough to pick that up for me. Very exciting. I've only watched the first movie so far, so as you can see, this is kind of the pinnacle of things that I want to watch. There's also a couple of movies that I have standing by that I'm still kind of going through. I've been going through the Blade Runner special features. My parents bought the movie. They didn't like it. They said, hey, do you want this? Hell yeah, I do. And there's kind of 3 hours of bonus features where they talk about the making of that movie and all the problems and how much everybody hated it, and it's fantastic to watch. If you know the movie and you haven't watched that, and if you have any interest whatsoever, some of the special features on some of these movies, I feel sometimes that they're maybe a little more interesting to people like me who do work in the industry, because my understanding of it is a little different than people that don't necessarily work in it. So I see some of these horror stories, especially in Blade Runner, and I shake my head and go, oh my God, yeah, that sounds like a nightmare, because I know, because I've been on some movies where it hasn't been to that extreme necessarily, but the ridiculous things that can go on a movie set are mind-boggling, and it's interesting to me in a different way seeing that kind of thing, especially with a movie like that eventually became this classic and is held in such high regard. It's good in a way to hear that they were dickheads just like everybody else is, which is also brings me back to some of these Nikatsu movies and some exploitation movies and things that I love. Some of those I absolutely don't want to know what went on set, because I can just imagine the kind of bullshit that would have happened and the just dangerous shit that would have gone on. And even today that goes on. Just recently saw The Raid 2. Fantastic movie. Again, the behind the scenes of that blew my mind, especially as a grip. Some of the rigs that they had on these cars, there's a big kind of chase scene on these cars, and they show the behind the scenes of that. It took them, I think, 8 days to film it, I think is what they said. I can't remember the amount of time, but a lot of the things that we'll do as the grip department is a lot of camera support. So if there's cameras that need to be mounted on cars, we'll mount the cameras. We'll supply all the gear to mount the cameras and the lights onto a car, whether it's a car driving on its own or whether the car is on kind of a flatbed camera picture vehicles, or a camera car or a trailer or some sort of tow rig. We'll build all that stuff and secure it and things in tandem with the guy who's actually driving the camera car. Then sometimes they'll want to do some crazy things like they did in this Raid 2, where they want to have camera operators on the car as well. And I've never seen it to this excess as I have in Raid 2. So we have this kind of 2-inch diameter speed rail, or just pipe, aluminum pipe, that we'll use a lot for some of these rigs, to triangulate some points and things like that, or triangulate like a platform off the front of a truck if we have to put a putt-putt generator to power some lights and things like that. They use it in such a way that there's cameramen standing on these fucking platforms as the car is hurtling down these highways at like 60 kilometers an hour. Infamously in this one movie, a camera, how does it start? I think it's on a platform outside. I think the camera starts interior, looking at people in the back seat fighting. The camera then gets passed out of the window to some people in kind of like a golf cart, gets handed off to another camera guy, so you can see kind of what's happening behind them. The camera on this golf cart slows down, so another car comes up towards them. The drivers are on the right. This is right-hand drive, so it gets passed in through the window of this car. It's a cameraman dressed up as a seat, basically, with a little window cut out for his face. He grabs onto the camera. His seat, he leans back into the back seat, slides into the back seat, hands the camera out of the window where there's a platform made on this car where there's a cameraman lying down to hold the camera up. It is some of the sketchiest looking shit I've seen in a long time, but it makes for an incredible shot. But it's those kind of things that I imagine, long story short, it's those kind of things that I imagine probably happened a lot as far as some of these exploitation movies went in the 70s and maybe some of this stuff in the 60s. Obviously not to that degree, but that sort of wild filmmaking where sure they were as safe as they could possibly be at the time, but there was a little less emphasis on safety. There was a little more emphasis on like, yeah, let's just go and do it, let's get these shots and let's make this movie. And they were a little wilder, where nowadays a lot of that stuff would not fly, even close to fly, So that gives all these movies a little bit of a different tone for me. And like I said, some of the exploitation movies, I don't know if I'd want to see the making of, because it would probably just give me heart palpitations and an ulcer. But then further on to that point, one of the things that's so great about Criterion is when they do these reissues of movies, they really try to compile as much of this old footage as they can and add in some interviews, some trailers, whatever other extras they can find. Unfortunately, with the box set stuff, there's nothing really in the way of extra features. I don't even know if these come with a trailer. No, I don't even think they come with a trailer. I think it's pretty bare bones for a lot of these box sets. This one I know has a bunch of special features on it, I think on the last disc. But again, check out Costin Bromstar. Which brings me to my last one here, Roman Polanski's Repulsion. 1965, 105 minutes, black and white, the Blu-ray edition of this. I remember seeing this on VHS way back when and loved it. Catherine Deneuve is amazing in it. There's some Polanski stuff I really, really like The Tenant is another amazing film. And it's this is sort of in that same area as The Tenant, as far as like, this is a woman, you're seeing a woman have a complete psychotic breakdown or a complete breakdown. She's locked herself away from the rest of the world, and it's just her in this apartment, and the little bit of interaction she has with the outside world is too much for her to bear. But you're seeing a person kind of disintegrate. Tenant is a similar sort of thing. You're seeing this guy, although in a different kind of way, you're seeing somebody kind of go over the edge as far as what environment can do to people, I suppose. But this one is incredible, and just on the word of special features, this has a audio commentary with Polanski and actress Catherine Deneuve, a documentary from 2003 called A British Horror Film. It's the making of Repulsion, featuring interviews with Polanski, one of the producers, the cinematographer, and some other people. The meat of this one for me, and what turned out to be really incredible, was a 1964 French television documentary filmed on the set of Repulsion with rare footage of Polanski and Deneuve at work. And that's what's incredible about this one right here. That's the first thing that I watched. Usually when there's footage from the time period of these movies being made, it's a lot of like, you might see a little bit of the set, but mostly you'll see like interviews with people on the set or on the outskirts of the set. This one has some fantastic footage, again, specific to my job. In the grip department, we're responsible for a lot of things. It's shaping and defining the light, any sort of, like I was saying, camera mounts, camera support, rigging in studios as far as hanging a grid above a stage where lights are going to be hung off of, that sort of thing, some more specialty type of rigging. So our job kind of encompasses a lot of different areas. Another thing that our camera support is, there's a dolly grip, and the dolly is what the camera rides on when you do a lot of these shots on track or dance floor, as we call it, where you're just kind of moving the dolly around. You boom up and down, and you can go left to right and forward and back. And your whole purpose of being a dolly grip is when you're doing what's called an over the shoulder, we're doing a close-up on this person here, and you want to see, just catch a bit of the shoulder of this person. When people are talking, they move a little bit back and forth, so you have to, what's called, keep the over. So a lot of the time, it's a little different now, but a lot of the time it used to be the dolly grip's sole responsibility to make sure that when they're doing those movements and they're getting blocked, you're moving the camera back and forth so they can still get that shot, so you're still seeing that person's face. The dolly grip's job was very, very important, especially back in, like, if you're thinking like 1964, incredibly important, because there's no monitors, everything is on film. The one shot that they do show of the dolly grip in this one that amazed me so much and just made me think about all these things is, it's a dolly track. So basically the track is what the dolly can ride on, so you can roll it, you can level out the track so it's a nice even platform. It keeps the dolly on a straight line, so it can't like sway side to side. It's a close-up of the door. The door opens. I believe it's Catherine Deneuve that comes in and walks into the apartment. So as far as if you're thinking of like focal length and the focus for the camera, you really want to have the camera matching her distance as she's moving. So how do you do that? That's the dolly grip. So you're there at the dolly, you're watching the action, you see her enter and take a pause, you start to move with the actor or actress, in this case with Catherine Deneuve, and you want to match that distance. So in those days, especially when you have a camera operator sitting on the dolly, you have the focus puller sitting on the dolly, you have the camera on the dolly, which weighed a hell of a lot more then than it does now. Sometimes you might even have the director on the dolly as well, kind of sitting by the camera. In this case, I think Polanski was standing at the side of the camera, so walking along with the dolly. You've got all these things, you've had all these rehearsals, you have to nail that shot because the focus puller is at this time sitting on the camera and hand right on the lens to adjust the focus. Nowadays it's this kind of remote controlled business. It's changed quite a bit, but the thought of the skill that it took back in those days for movie making, not saying that there's no skill now, absolutely not implying that at all. I'm saying the skills are different these days. Back then I kind of miss the skill that it would have taken to be a dolly grip at those times. Is incredible. Dolly is one of my favorite jobs that I've done on movies. I really like it. You really feel like you have a hand in making the movie to a different degree than you do in any other department. You're right there. You're setting the final shot. Wow, a half an hour already. Hey, so that shut off right there. So that must have mean I hit a half an hour mark. I'll try not to go on too much longer here. I get kind of nerdy about it. I was just talking about the importance of hitting marks and how it differs now. We were shooting this courtroom drama and it was one of the lawyer's closing arguments. So we were kind of set up, A camera and B camera on the same piece of track. We were set up behind the jury, kind of looking over their heads, catching a few of their heads in the foreground as the lawyer makes his closing remarks and he's pacing back and forth. They didn't want to set any marks for him whatsoever. I don't even know if they set a range as far as how far one way or the other he could go. So A camera's on their piece of track, I'm on my piece of track, and this actor, we did this take, I don't know, 8-10 times. In all of those takes, not a single time did he hit the same mark. A lot of the times, depending on the actor, some actors will hit a mark at a certain line so you can kind of follow their dialogue and know, okay, this is the line before this line. At that line, he's going to hit this mark. I can get ready. This guy, you couldn't predict it. You literally had to watch his body movement, which makes for a little more difficult shot. You feel like you're chasing him as opposed to moving with him throughout this dialogue. You're chasing to catch up, and he was really good at faking us out. A bunch of times. Again, it's not that he was doing it on purpose, it's just his natural way of moving through the scene. He would gesture one way and then all of a sudden turn and walk the other way, so it was difficult. So this, like I said, the skills nowadays are a different set of skills. But something in me longs for these days of the dolly grip having more of an active role. They've come up with these things called overkeepers or sliders or linear beds, and it's 2 foot, 3 foot kind of piece of gear that sits on top of the dolly, and then you put the head on that and it has its own maneuverability. It can slide back and forth so the dolly can stay stationary, and especially for those overs that I was talking about, the camera operator can kind of make those adjustments on the overkeeper. Hence the name overkeeper. So a lot of that skill that the dolly grip, for example, would have had to have back in these days have gone to the wayside, and it's unfortunate because then all of a sudden you work on a movie where the expectations of the dolly grip are higher, and it's like, well, how come you can't do that? What do you mean you can't keep an over? Well, because I've had zero practice in it, you know what I mean? everybody uses the slider. The dolly grip's job has been taken away to some degree. You're more just the babysitter now in some respects. Again, that's not always the way that it goes. But it makes it tough to rise to the occasion when now all of a sudden there's somebody who has these expectations. One last story and then I'll wrap it up, I promise. A good friend of mine who's no longer in film was a fantastic... So considering I'm somebody who works in the industry, it's mind-boggling that I can't figure out my goddamn consumer Canon camera and figure out enough to charge the freaking battery. I swear this is it. I swear to you. There's no issues until all of a sudden it turns off. The very last story to tie all that up. A good friend of mine who doesn't work in film anymore was a dolly grip. He's been in film in Winnipeg, or he had been in film in Winnipeg since about the age of, I don't know, 18, 19 years old. So I think early 90s possibly. Back when the film industry here was, I think there was one show a year and that was it. There was very few people who worked in the industry. There wasn't much in the way of commercial work, that sort of thing. So he's had a lot of experience in the grip department, period, and then he moved up to a dolly grip, which he did for the last, I don't know how many years of his career here, but quite a few years. Really, really good guy, really smart guy. A great dolly grip, and we were working on a show called Curse of Chucky here. A lot of the times, I can talk about it now, a lot of the times I can't really talk about the shows that I'm working on. There's all sorts of clauses that we sign and this sort of thing, but enough time has passed for that movie. I think I can divulge that I worked on that movie. So Curse of Chucky was filmed here, and it was a really good show in a whole bunch of different ways. Just on a little mushy side, that was the first show that me and Special Sexy Lady Friend started dating on. That was when I asked her out on her first date. We'd known each other for a long time, and I finally just worked up the nerve to go for it. So aside from that, it was great to see the doll. It was great to see the puppeteers, because there was a lot of actual effects on that show. There wasn't a lot of after effects. There was some, but the director, writer really wanted to go back to those early Chucky movies where the puppet was there and the puppeteers were on set. So it was really cool to see that sort of thing. It was really great to see what they did with the set. We used the set for, there was one of the latest Home Alone movie, I think it went straight to TV or straight to DVD, was also filmed in Winnipeg. And but the construction and sets people converted that set into the Chucky set. So if you see both those movies, you'll probably recognize the set. It's just been kind of made a little more grim and scary in the Chucky movie, and I think they added an elevator as well. So there was many reasons. It was in that one though that really, to tie all this in, what the possibilities of a dolly grip are, because they wanted to do a lot of practical things. I think it's the shot that the credits are over top of. Believe it was a pullback to reveal the Chucky doll sitting in a chair and circling around the Chucky doll, keeping it in the center of the frame. So literally, this is the kind of shot that just doesn't happen as much, especially for us. Probably across the board it doesn't happen as much. Not to say it never happens, but it's a fairly complex shot. I mean, you're not on a piece of track. You're literally riding on good one-side sheets of wood, and laying your marks down and laying out a path, like with tape, as kind of like a guideline of where you want to pull back to. Changing, each of the dollies has different gears, basically. For example, the Fisher has kind of a straight ahead gear where just the back wheels turn, just like normal driving. Then they have one that's called roundy round, where all the wheels turn and you can literally pivot on one point. And then they have one that's called crab, where all the wheels turn the same direction. So if you're looking straight ahead, you can turn the wheels left and drive sideways. So there's different functions with and the varying dollies have different modes as well. So if you think about it, it's a dolly grip taking that camera into his hands and making that shot. Ideally in a shot like that, you don't want to move the camera. The camera operator is there to do some minor adjustments, but in reality, you want that cameraman to be able to stay stationary, because any sort of movement, which is what they ended up using, a take where there was a little bit of camera adjustment and you can see it in it. It's unfortunate because that shot should have been set by the dolly grip. It should have really been everybody off the dolly. The focus puller, if anything, standing by or sitting on the dolly, I think is what he had to do, just to make sure that that distance, that minute change that'll happen when you're doing that tight circle around, is still in focus. And just let the dolly grip set the shot. Unfortunately, the camera operator was on there and didn't quite have the faith. And I guess this also goes back to what we were talking about earlier with these days it's kind of go, 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 shoot the rehearsal, we gotta move on, instead of, hey, this is actually for once a complicated shot. We really should now take the time to rehearse this a few times, make sure all the lighting, and then let's do this. It's not gonna be a shot that you're gonna get in one take. I defy anybody to get that in one take. It's just not gonna happen. If everybody just gives me the time, I can do it. So, in all props to my buddy, he pulled it off. I mean, there were some shots that were unbelievable, and the skill just watching him that day, especially in that moment, again, was one of those moments where, holy shit, there's a lot of skill that's been lost over the years because of the changing technology and because of the whole industry itself has gone through these changes and the move to digital and how quick everybody expects things to go. I highly recommend checking it out. The movie itself is okay. I was never a huge fan of the Chucky movies. I think we did a pretty good job. It looks pretty good. The lighting, I like the lighting in it. The story, whatever. It's fine, But it's one of those that I'm a little bit proud to have worked on. It was a fun show. It was a good mood throughout for the most part. There was a whole bunch of surprises from a few people. The director of photography himself pulled off a really good look, and that movie alone has gotten him quite a lot of work. Just as using that single movie as his calling card from that point on has got him a lot of extra work, which again, I wish I could divulge, but at some point I'll let you know, I suppose, if we ever talk like this again. So it's great. It opened a lot of doors for a lot of people, which is a really good thing. So that kind of ties up Repulsion, which is over there now, because now it's the next day and I'm filming this. So yeah, I mean, I could talk about this sort of thing for days. There's a lot in the film industry that I really do enjoy, and there's parts that I absolutely despise, because at the end of the day it's still a job, and as with any job, it's gonna suck. It's gonna have its good days, it's gonna have its bad days. To kind of close that all up, one thing that I do love about the job is, because I've loved film for so long and loved watching movies, and it really gives me a new appreciation. Like when I see a shot in a movie where I know the amount of work that it's taken to get that shot, blows my mind even more. It gives me that extra appreciation of seeing some of these movies. And like I said, going back in time, especially with the Criterion releases, where they're really trying to, for the most part, reissue or preserve these classic movies from all over the world, of all different genres, of A movies, B movies, Z movies, whatever sort of budget. There's always something in them that I can appreciate, because I can put myself in the time a little easier, and I can appreciate what set is like now and how it probably sort of was even then. It just kind of adds to my enjoyment of the whole thing, which is partially why I wish I knew a little more, say, about things like coloring comics, or the process of going from script to final product, especially the art and the coloring and the line work and stuff. I wish I knew all that in greater detail, because I feel like that would really lend a lot of these books a different level of appreciation if I knew some of those ins and outs. It makes me wish for a comics journal again, or something along those lines that delves in a little deeper into this format that we all love so much. So yeah, that's it. That's all I gotta say. Thanks very much for sticking around if you have this 45 minutes, whatever it's been. Check out Criterion, sign up for the newsletter, hit those 50% off sales, guaranteed, and take chances on some of it, you know. There's always trailers attached. If you can't find them on the site, you can find trailers on YouTube. YouTube is chock full of little bits and bobs here. So yeah, take a chance on some movies from around the world and, you know, sit back and enjoy. All right, thanks very much, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.